SP Spaz.
Yeah!
And today we're going to be talking about a function that Jeff is actually quite fond of.
Belching?
Belching? Okay. Well,
eating?
Right, so we'll go over to the diagram now, and I'll give the diagram. And I'll give a tiny bit of explanation.
I've got a diagram on my shirt. You gotta
okay, here we go.
First.
Yep. I'll click on your square.
I don't know if you can see that or not, though. You tell me.
Oh, wow.
I can't tell.
So it's some kind of Pythagoras thing.
Can you read it if I get closer?
Something right here.
Yeah, it says find x. And then it says...
I always said, Jeff, that you've got a little INTJ inside of you and it's coming out in your shirt.
It says, it's right here, duh. No, that's like anti-INTJ. You're wrong.
Okay, fair enough. Right.
Man, I look like a bum today. Didn't shave, and I'm all like... maybe this is actually good, though. You said we're going to talk about NE, so,
Yeah.
That's like the, least attention to detail.
Right. So, in theory, here, when it says minimum energy, is that it's theoretically the NE is good enough to do simple repetitive tasks. What? And Google Translate.
The one thing that I do well is simple repetitive tasks.
Yep, that's the problem with that. That bit is a bit one size fits all. Oh yeah, and this is the social adaptation block. So, for instance, ESFP is an extroverted perceiver, and they can sort of switch between extroverted sensing and an extroverted intuiting. And I suppose you do a little bit of that, Jeff, when you're entertaining people. It's sort of like...
Yeah, I think that I've said before. I think that happens more the more tired I get.
Yeah,
it's have more natural switch because it's like I think of more goofy, random ideas. It's like I'm always, funny, but
yep,
that's when I'm more randomly funny. So, as opposed to making jokes that are more like plays on the words or the literal word somebody said, that tends to be my kind of default humor. So that's more of a sensing thing because it's about the actual concrete words. Whereas when I get tired, I tend to make more random associations, and come up with weird stuff.
Weird stuff.
Like I once wrote a song called Boom Shack, and it was sort of a rip-off of another song. Well, sort of rip-off of sort of a style of song that I'd heard. But the song it most resembled was a particular Sheryl Crow song, but where she sort of seemed to just sort of list some stuff that kind of rhymed with each other. Some of it did. Which is basically all that Billy Joel was doing, and We Didn't Start the Fire, except he was actually doing it as like a history lesson. But it was just a list, basically. Arranged mostly chronologically. So Sheryl Crow's was a little bit more abstract than that, and so was mine, because what I just did on the song Boom Shack was I just came up with like word combinations that sounded good together. But so like the sound part of it was sort of like, I guess you could say, a sensing thing in terms of what sounded cool together or what rhymed. But the words were like just random stuff that popped in my head. So
yeah, it's like in terms of poetry and lyrics, I've said that to people that it's something which is sort of half artisan, half NF.
Launcher, I hardly knew her.
Right, so you're in the
That's not the first time I've made that joke, but it might be the first time that it's been recorded. So I couldn't resist
it's a
saying that
first.
one more time. So
yep. So what I thought, folks, is that we go through the bullet points, give Jeff maximum time to express his Jeffness, which is his brilliant observations.
And I apologize for my yawning. I'm quite tired, but I am determined to make it through this video anyway, because I feel that the public needs to know, and I don't want to deprive them of those brilliant observations you were talking about.
Right. What's interesting here is Victor has recognized the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the ESFP, but he's classified it under NE.
Yeah, that's the thing is, at first I got a little bit offended by that sort of thing, like, because it kind of played into that whole, like, all creativity and ingenuity comes from, like, intuitive stuff. But the more I thought about it, I was like, well, it doesn't really matter, like, if you assign that to a particular function or whatever. You're not saying that just because that's not, like, the dominant function in somebody that, they can't be, like, creative and stuff. But and it kind of actually fuels my point that most people do a lousy job of typing celebrities, because so many of the entertainment people, it's like comedians or people who come up with creative stories, like the intuitive type people who are on type forums typing them will say that they're all N's because they talk about how creative they are. But obviously, as it says in this diagram, that's just a role being played in terms of that's one thing that you come up with, but it doesn't mean you're going to be better at that just because you're intuitive type. You know what I mean? So yeah. In fact, I might even be better at it than, say, somebody who's like more introverted in their intuition, because it's like a different kind of stuff. So yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead. What do you think?
I think because all the functions all mix up and contribute towards each other. So, for instance, what we were saying in the previous episode about ESFP is wanting to be the center of attention and using their people skills and all of that kind of stuff. That's going to make the actual humor stronger than what the function says it should be.
Yeah, and I think that to use this opportunity to talk about celebrities again, but in a different way.
Yep, that's fine.
I think that's what made the whole Lennon-McCartney team and songwriting a really strong team, was the combination of those factors.
Yeah,
because I think Lennon, I think, was probably the NE was more at the forefront for him.
Yeah,
but he still had some of the S.E.E. and Paul the other way around, so they could be creative together in that way.
Yeah, I would speculate that Lennon was maybe an INFJ because he was actually very submissive to Yoko Ono, and
I don't know though. He seemed more like a perceiver to me, but that's a whole other debate, I guess.
yeah, that judging perceiver thing for introverts. Oh, I
don't know that he was an introvert for sure either, though.
I think I really don't know what type he was, because also interestingly, people think he was this big left winger, and he was at one point. But like towards the end of his life, he did an interview where he talked about you can't trust the government at all, and he actually sounded more like a libertarian.
Yeah,
And
well, he's, to me, comes off very NF, and I think probably NFP. That's my guess. But
because
anyway, that's a whole separate thing. But I just brought that up as an example of something that, things were working together. But what were we talking about?
yeah, I'll just say about John Lennon's, like he did his like socialist type songs. Imagine, and
I meant before that.
oh, I was talking about how like for instance, just looking at the model and saying he's in the third
I can't
position.
see it anymore, by the way.
Oh no,
Oh, there it is.
you can't.
Okay.
Oh no. Yeah,
Now
what I'm saying is,
you're going out a little bit though. You're cutting out.
oh, okay. This should be stronger than in the ESTP in general.
What?
This function, in terms of being funny, generally I would say ESFPs are funnier. Yeah, I would say they're funnier than ESTPs.
We are. ESTPs think they're funny, and sometimes they are, but it's like a different style of humor. They have more. They're probably better at like the biting humor. Like. Did you see Jay's video about why each type sucks or whatever?
Well, the one about INFP is where he talks about them being,
no.
And then he said living in your witch's hut.
Yeah, but did you see the one that he said he describes how each type sucks?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, yeah. See, there's an example of ESTP humor because the whole thing is basically designed to like piss everybody off of whatever type. But it's real obvious what he's doing, but it's like it's still funny because he comes up with like these ridiculous things. And if you boil it down, it's like, but he basically just said every other type is stupid. he mixed in a lot of other stuff in there, but yeah, there's some pretty funny lines in there, like something about it's your responsibility to stop them from spreading their filth throughout the world.
I think my two favorite lines from him were when he talks about I actually wrote it down. He said, "If God tells me to ban you from the channel, I'm going to ban you from the channel. It's that simple." Mm-hmm. And then when he talks about INFPs, and he talks about them being depressed and listening to Sigur Rós in their freaking witch's hut. Or in their freaking witch's house.
At the previous Republican presidential debate, when Trump responded to Rand Paul with, "Well, I haven't gone after your appearance, and there's a lot of material there."
Oh yeah, and believe me, there's a lot of material there.
So he basically said, "I'm not saying you're ugly, but you're ugly."
But in reality, Rand Paul's not bad looking.
No. And that's part of the reason I actually said that I early on I picked him as having a good chance, because if you look at the old pictures, the portraits of Franklin Pierce, he looks a lot like Franklin Pierce. Like they both have the curly. Huh?
Who's Franklin Pierce?
See, you're forgiven since you're, UKer and all that. He's a former president.
Yeah.
He was president back in the 18 something or others. I'm not forgiven because I don't remember exactly when, but
your encyclopedic knowledge of American politics.
Except I've forgotten when he was actually president, but it was in the 1800s sometime. See, people, this generation probably don't realize, because we've had this string of now 3 consecutive 2-term presidents. That is a very rare thing. Didn't happen in the old days. In fact, we had a string there in the 1800s where with several consecutive 1-term presidents, and a 2-termer was only came around once in a while. So this whole two-term for every president thing is a relatively new phenomenon.
Although, I remember
In fact,
thinking that in 2012. Yeah.
3 consecutive two-term presidents has only happened one previous time in American history. That was Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe.
In fact, in our lifetime, there have been quite a few one-term presidents. Ford, Carter, and Bush the Elder.
Yep.
But what they said was, in each of those cases, there were like extenuating circumstances, such as, I think with Carter, where you had like Kennedy ran against him in the primary, and it was like,
and even like before that, like Lyndon Johnson had 2 terms, but the first one was just filling out Kennedy's term. He was only elected to 1 other term.
That he could have actually run again because it was less than 2 years.
Right. He could have run again, but he chose not to because he figured he probably was going to lose.
No, I thought it was because he had fantastic depression because of the Vietnam War.
I'm sure there were a lot of factors, but this is not presidential history talk. So
yes, that's right.
Try to get into that. I'm definitely not an expert on LBJ or anything related to that time in our history.
So here's a good. I think this is a good bullet point for you. Relies on his ingenuity and resourcefulness, and that lets us tell us some loads of good stories and examples of where you've done that.
And you're gonna have to help me out with that, Ben.
Oh no, I have to get the mind pose.
Tell some stories is not good.
Oh no. Okay. Situations where, say, you've been at work or where the SJs are like, oh no, what do we do? And then you've sort of come up with a solution on the fly.
I don't think that ever happened.
Or maybe when you worked on radio and something happened and you had to improvise.
My brother and I used to do both fake and real radio shows because before we actually were on a radio station, we just did it in the house, where we would go to the stereo, that had the dual tape deck, so we could, queue up cassettes. See, kids, cassettes were the never mind. And we would, we would do our little banter and stuff, and then play the song after that. So we called that the Miller Show. And we even had a few remotes. Like we went to, when we took a trip to Disney World when I was in high school, we did. We called that the Invading Orlando special. And we actually recorded stuff into my brother's micro cassette recorder. So we even had some interviews and reviews of the different rides and shows that we did at Disneyland. So that was fun. But yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff was always improv. I mean, we didn't exactly prepare anything in advance. So it was just sort of like whatever came to us. And then we actually were on the air at Texas A&M's student-run station. Then we did all kinds of stuff. Like started out like the show I had. I was trying to sort of have a certain genre of music that I was generally playing, but then after some time I got kind of bored with that and just kind of did random stuff. So when he was in there with me, we started doing things like, well, we just went through like the old record collection that they had there at the station, and we found like some George Carlin comedy albums. So we started playing some of those, and just finding random weird stuff to play. Like there was this one kind of comedy folk singer named Andy Breckman, and I found this hilarious song where it's like he's talking about this legendary character or whatever, but as he's telling the story, it's like the character starts talking back to him, like doesn't want to do what he's telling that he does in the song. So he starts like having this battle with the character that he's singing about in the song. Like like talking to him, saying, you know, because he's supposed to like climb this tree to do something or other, and then it's like he says, "No, I'm not going to climb that tree," and then says, so he's like serving as the narrator, but he's also taught. Yeah, I guess you have to hear it to appreciate, but it's funny anyway. So yeah, we had goofy stuff, you know, like that, but. And then, you know, sometimes we did things where we would record into the tape deck, like we would be doing a talk show or something like one tape that I still have somewhere, I think. I had discovered by then, this was probably 92 or so. So I was in high school, like 15, 16, somewhere in there. And I had figured out that I basically had discovered the concept of radio networks, like syndication and how that kind of stuff worked, and how, because I would listen to enough radio that, you know, here they would say, like, you know, you're listening to the Talk America network or the American Sports Network or the whatever, you know. So I was like, okay, so I got the concept that, you know, there are these radio networks, and sometimes stations would air like most of the programming, and other times it was just like certain shows they would pick up. And so I used that in our like improving, you know, our own shows. So I came up with the Total Idiot Network. And I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but I came up with, like, you know, funny names for the shows that were on this network. But we did this one that was like an interview where my brother interviewed me about like the election or something like that. And it was funny because, you know, since it was a Total Idiot Network, like, you know, my character in the thing, like, was being interviewed, he supported the Total Idiot Party. So he basically, he had never heard of like the Republican and Democrat candidates. His support was firmly behind Conrad Associagan, the Idiot Party nominee for president. So anyway, my brother actually had like he recorded stuff. There was a commercial that was on there from the original, from what we actually recorded off the radio. And it was like this really enthusiastic announcer, selling whatever product he was selling. So it was this commercial, and my brother would like hit record in the middle of it at certain points and put his own, like, you know, way before the magic of like YouTube editing and stuff like that people do, where they, you know, edit and hack up videos. He was taking a radio recording on tape, hitting record, saying something, then, you know, playing it again, so that you had it, you know, interjected on the tape. So he, for whatever, you know, the thing with artisans is, you know, we become sort of like obsessed with a particular thing. If you remember the classic days of David Letterman, he would just decide some phrase or word was like just fun to say, so he would repeat it a bunch over and over again in that show for no particular reason. That's an example. My brother, my ISTP brother, for some reason, I think Letterman's an ISTP too, but decided that he really liked the phrase "severed head." So in this recording of the commercial, you had this really enthusiastic guy being like, "Have you tried the new?" And then he would hit the thing, so he would go, "Severed head."
Did he use that? You know when they had the Lorena Bobbitt thing, where she cut off her husband's penis? Did your brother bring that phrase back, severed head?
No.
Okay.
Thanks for ruining the moment, Ben.
Oh, sorry.
By just making the male audience collectively cringe.
Yeah. Well, he ruined John Wayne Bobbitt's moment.
Well, yeah.
But then he became a porn star.
I don't know why you had to bring
out.
that back up. Like, you just trying to depress people, or what?
Well, he couldn't bring it back up again. Actually, he could. He got it sewn back on.
So anyway, see, that's an example of bad connections, folks. That's where you use that. See, we had the contrast of, you know, the good way to use it and the bad way. But anyway, he was saying the severed head thing. So it was like the commercial would be interrupted. They started doing it more and more frequently. So to the point where the guy was like, every other word was severed head. So yeah, it was funny. I guess you had to be there. Your head would be severed. Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, we used to improv stuff all the time. I remember I was doing this one thing where Ray Charles used to do soda commercials back in like the 80s, 90s, or I think he did Diet Pepsi. Uh, and there was one
Is he
commercial
blind?
where, what?
Is Ray Charles blind?
He was, yes.
Right.
So that was
The audience
joke.
might not know.
Well, if they're older than 12, they probably do.
Right, okay.
Ray Charles is pretty famous, Ben.
Yeah, I know, but fine for the kids watching.
Yeah. All three of the kids watching. Ray Charles is a famous musician, songwriter, singer, legendary performer. Anyway, he did some commercials. I think it was for Diet Pepsi, if I remember right. And they even made it like the slogan for the Diet Pepsi was a very Ray Charles-ish slogan. So they fit it to the performer because it was, "You got the right one, baby, uh-huh." That was their slogan for a while. But they did this commercial where they made fun of the fact that Ray Charles was blind because, it's fun to make fun of blind people. And the deal was like he held up this can of Diet Coke, but he was talking about how great Diet Pepsi was. And then he took a sip of it, and then he said, "Okay, who's the wise guy?"
That's good.
And so I did, impressions of that, but I did my own versions of it. Basically, again, the SB thing, you take your thing and you spin it. So I came up with other things for him to say that about. Is basically like I would sort of do my Ray Charles character, like having various things where people were substituting stuff or giving him things and trying to mess with him because he was blind. And the one that got the biggest laugh, and I don't remember if it was actually a party or what but it was some kind of gathering, and there was quite a few people that were listening to me do my Ray Charles thing. And I say quite a few, it wasn't like 50 or something, but it was more than 2 or 3. And the biggest laugh I got was because I did, the impression of Ray Charles always had this way where he would play the piano and he would like rock back and forth. He was always wearing the shades and he would be like, like this. And so I was doing I was playing the piano, but of course I didn't have a real piano. So it was like I was playing an invisible piano. But then as I was doing it, then Ray Charles said something like, "Okay, who stole my piano?" And, that brought the house down, even though I didn't know at what time I said that it was going to be perceived that, it was going to be that funny to people, but apparently it was. Because, it was like one of my favorite comedy writers, former Simpsons producer David Merkin, said one of his main styles of humor was what he called screw the audience humor. The concept behind that is just sort of like you set up the audience to expect one thing and then you kind of twist it into something else. And so it was sort of what I was doing there, in the sense that set up to think Ray Charles is being fooled by something, but he's playing the piano the whole time. But then I say, the piano's not really there because it wasn't really there. So it's like I use reality in the joke.
Yeah, misdirection.
Yeah, and for those that don't know Simpsons well, David Merkin was the executive producer the 5th and 6th seasons of Simpsons, which were, in my opinion, the very best. Although my favorite overall episode is actually from season 4, but in terms of the seasons, 5 and 6 stand above any other ones. And now it's quite a long time ago now, because I think they're into like season 26 or something now. So yeah, hard to believe it's been like 20 years since then. But an example of this in terms of David Merkin's jokes were there was an episode where Lisa was telling everybody about how they had to cut up the 6-pack can holders before they threw them away, because when they ended up in the ocean, fish would get trapped in them. And so she, she demonstrates, she cuts it up, and then she puts this fish that was stuck in there back in the water and says, "Here you go, little fish." And the fish like happily hops into the water and is immediately eaten by a bigger fish. So and Lisa goes, "No." So it's kind of like, it's a style, it's a cynical style of humor that basically is like, no matter what you do, something's gonna screw it up. But it's not in like a mean-spirited way. It's just in a like, this is just facts of life. It basically, there's a long history of the other temperaments crushing the idealists' idealism in different
Yeah,
ways.
that's it. That's the thing. Because she's
and the way that
NF.
artisans do it, the way that SPs do it is by just sort of presenting a reality like that in a funny way, whereas the other temperaments, the SJs and the NTs, might not actually, be as humorous with it. It's more of a cold, hard reality kind of. So yeah. Anyway, that's an example of some stuff.
So you've I think this you had a situation with is that you've come up with little solutions for like parenting SPs, little tactics.
Oh no, I don't have any solutions. I don't know anything. If you're parenting an SP, like, I mean, just invest in military school or like, prison or something. Yeah. Just, I mean, SP kids are crazy, man. What I figured out all my stuff pretty much trial and error over time with my son. I would have these moments where I would sort of have a little bit of a revelation based on what had happened between the two of us. And one of them I figured out before I even knew for sure that he was an ESTP. I figured out that there were times in which he would basically pick a fight with me in order to fire himself up to do something else. And I didn't get that at first, but I finally clicked. It finally clicked one time when he came out of his room and basically started like berating me. I don't even remember what it was about, but it was just like he was just coming up with things to get mad at me about. And there are obviously a lot of ways I could have responded to that. Could have, said he was being punished in some way. I could have, stopped him from talking. There's many different things I could have said. But what I did say was, okay, but I think you could have said that in a more respectful way or something. I said something, words to that effect. And he said something like, "I know," or "Yeah, I know, Dad." And then he turned around and he went back in his room and he cleaned his room.
So he must have felt guilty.
Didn't make it spotless or anything. I don't think it was guilt. I think it was he wanted I may have told him to clean the room at some point or told him there was something he couldn't have until he did it. I don't remember the specifics of that. And it may have just been he was tired of stuff being strewn about and wanted to have more room to do whatever he was working on. But he was trying to motivate himself to do this. And he had to get himself riled up to do that, to get himself fired up. And the way he chose to do that was to pick a fight with me, was to like have this interaction. And it was like a part of me realized that as that was happening, that I needed to not respond in a way that would actually hurt his feelings in some way. Because if I did that, it would ruin it. It would be like that became the thing where his feelings were hurt, and then it wasn't he's fired up to do something. It was just he's hurt by what I said. So I had to be careful about the way I responded to it in a way that didn't like let all the air out of the balloon. Another thing that I figured out is that it was important, and this is something I tell any parents with SP kids, that it's important for them to feel like they can get away with something sometimes.
Yeah.
Because if they feel like they never can, then they feel really oppressed and repressed. But if you let them get away with everything, then it doesn't feel good to them anymore, because then it's like that's not anything novel if they can always do whatever they want. So that's when they start to do really dangerous stuff, try to take more risks and make them, because you haven't given them the limits and the boundaries that they need. But what I say is, find something that they can feel like they get away with that really isn't that bad. Make a bigger deal of it than it actually is. I'm not saying lie to them, but find something that you can object to in a way that they'll sort of have that as something. Oh, I can do this when mom or dad isn't around, and then I'm getting away with it, and something you really don't care that much about, but they can feel like that. And for me, I did it with actually did it with Pokemon stuff, because I acted like Pokemon was this evil thing that I really had a problem with. The reality is, it's not any worse than any of those other goofy Japanese kids things, but I made it out to be like, Pokemon was like this sinister thing that the Japanese were trying to take over the world, and they actually did a South Park about that. Like, and I came up, I mean, I had those ideas before I even saw that, but after I did, then even more so. But anyway, so that was something where it was like he had, he hid his Pokemon cards from me, like, because it was this thing of like, oh, Dad doesn't know I've got all these Pokemon cards, I do. But I wanted him to have, something like that, because I remembered myself as a kid, and how when I had something that I was getting away with, it felt good. See, that's the thing that I think other types don't understand, is they don't quite understand that mentality, because they don't feel that same way. Like, guardian kids, it's like, I'm not, there's a stereotype of them all being like goody two shoes or something. Obviously, that isn't true. Plenty of guardians can cause trouble and get in trouble and do plenty of things they're not supposed to do. The difference is that they get their self-respect from actually doing the right things. So when they're misbehaving or being disobedient as kids, I'm not going to say they get no thrill out of it, because I'm sure there's some, but it's sort of like more of a immaturity, or they're just going along with what other kids are doing,
Yes. Yeah.
and they actually feel better when their parents tell them, you've been good. Like, that's actually something that makes them feel good, when their parents are like, you've been doing all the right things. Like, that's something
Yeah.
that, guardian kids are like, that boosts their self-esteem. Whereas for artisan kids, it's almost the opposite. It's like, we don't want to be seen as doing the right thing. We want to be seen as being the troublemaking kids, even if we're not really doing that great a job of it. So if you create the atmosphere that sort of makes the kid feel like, oh, you're being bold and adventurous and dangerous and kind of, then it makes them feel better. And if you compliment them on doing all the nice, wonderful guardian stuff, they're not going to be as happy about that. In fact, they sometimes can be downright upset, like, oh, it's like I'm being called boring.
So
Now, depending on the age of the kid, they may not be able to tell you that. They may not be able to articulate that. But
mm,
that's an insight where you can figure out from the things that they do, the way they react to things. Obviously, probably for kids that are more outgoing or more talkative, more expressive, it's easier to tell those things because they show it to you. Whereas the ones that are, you know, shyer and more introverted and stuff, it may take a little longer to figure those things out. You have to dig a little deeper.
do you think it's fair to call many artisans rebels without a cause?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We don't have the cause. The NFs are the ones that have causes.
Yeah.
That's again an example why, in the online discussion about John Lennon, not to go too long on him. I don't even really like John Lennon that much, but but people saying that he's an artisan, like, because he caused trouble in school or he did, again, there's a difference between rebels with a cause and rebels without a cause. And he likes to start trouble with reasons. Like he had things he was trying to prove or trying to change. It wasn't just everything was for the fun of it, you know. So that's what I see as the difference. And uh, uh, go ahead.
I think
What?
I think that in the early days, the Beatles, they were sort of really like when they were like really living up to the rock and roll image, and that was a rebelliousness was part of the image of being rock and roll.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, I think that to me, as I look, in a general sense, is sort of the difference between when all kids can rebel in some ways, but they do it in different ways. And like you
Yeah,
said, with SP kids, they're not rebelling because they're trying to prove some point or accomplish a particular thing or learn something. NTs have that rebelling to learn stuff, um, but it is in a way learning stuff as they do it because it's perfecting technique. That was something that Kersey talked about in Please Understand Me books about. Basically it's sort of you try things and see what works. So they're pushing the limits and the boundaries and testing techniques, um, to see what effect or what actions have what effect on other people or animals or things, whatever they're doing stuff with. So,
do
but
you
most of
think?
the time, I think arson kids are not. It's both sides of it. It's like the causes that are trying to change something for the positive, and the causes that are trying to like actually hurt somebody or cause pain. Uh, I think in general, SP kids aren't doing either direction. It's they're doing stuff because it's fun or they feel like doing it. It's the thing. It's the instinct of respond in this way. It's not
And it's like,
usually an agenda.
and it's like when you ask them, why did you do it, and they say I felt like it. Now,
Yep.
to many other types, that is infuriating.
Yep.
Oh dear. That's it's like the life level in a computer game, people. Like, is there how much drinks left?
Hmm.
Right. So yeah, I mean, so that first bullet point. I mean, that people want to see more on that if they see the first episode talking about audacity, adaptability, and artistry.
Hmm.
So it's sort of like he's recognized the same things as the artisan temperament, but he's categorized them under a different function. And again, the second one, not afraid to be spontaneous or make unconventional decisions.
Well, it's not just not afraid. That's like what we love doing. That's our natural way of being. In fact, we don't ever want to be seen as conventional. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't ever do conventional things. That's sort of the paradox about SPs. Is like the more we try to be like not like everybody else, the more we show ourselves to be like all the other SPs. Because we have that in common. So it's like and that's what I had to accept myself because I wanted to have that, that belief. I was like, oh, I'm not like those other people, And over time and maturation and all that, I realized, yeah, I pretty much am. And it actually became something that I could not only be content with, but actually think was pretty cool um, when I see someone, whether they're famous or not, but when I see someone either on video or in person, that it sort of clicks where they jump out at me as, oh, this person is an SP type because of the stuff they say in terms of not just what they say, but the way they say it. And, I don't
You give
have
some
some kind of
examples.
100% proof device that automatically knows this, but I just, the mentality when they start talking, it just comes out
Right.
that way. I'm sorry, what did you say?
Could you give us some examples of sort of things that SPs say?
Um, Well, it's talking about like not wanting to be seen as conventional and all that, and that's something you will hear from SPs. Not necessarily those exact words, but you'll hear things like, "I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing," or "I wanted to do my own thing," or "I wanted to." I was bored, so I came up with a new way to do blah. It's like, um, I can contrast it with what I hear from SJs, which is like everything is better when you fit it into the conventional, when you fit it into the way things are supposed to be done. And they talk about their like adventures outside of that as being, it's like this, I don't know how to describe it. It's like this other category. It's like, here's normal life, here's real life, this is the things that you do. You go to work, you take care of your kids, you do the and you have a certain amount of like allowable playtime or whatever, and that's like your other self. Your play self is like this sort of
Mm.
detached thing that, oh, the play self is let out for this period of time, and then when that time is over, you go back to the real world and to your real life, which is hard work and toughness and doing and conforming and doing everything that's expected of you.
Do you think
For
a lot of SJs, when they retire, they're at a loss of what to do?
sometimes if they don't have something that they already are involved in that's not work,
Yeah,
or it still could be, it still is work, but not like career work. Right,
yeah,
and most SJs usually have some other things in their life they belong to, like church or civic groups of some
yeah.
kind, or they have something they're involved in outside of work, so they can do more of that. And probably playtime is extended, and depending on the person, because I mean, I think of the SJs, ESTJs are the ones that have the hardest time relaxing and
Yeah.
not working. And so even when they're on vacation, it's like they have to work when they're on vacation too. Like they can't completely relax. I mean, when I listen to, I have two ESTJ coworkers that are general managers of restaurants, and one of them, and she basically, like, when she goes on vacation, um, she still like checks in with work. It's like she can't completely drop that. And then the other one, now he does get he does get completely away from work because he goes like deer hunting. But he still,
Wow.
when he talks about doing that, it's like it still sounds like work to me, because everything he says about it is very like, it's like I don't know, maybe if you heard the way he talked, it'd be easier, because it's like, yeah, it's good that I can relax, I can get out there, and then I don't have to worry about anything else. Just the way that he talks about it, it's still like, I just can't imagine like him actually completely relaxing, because I've like never seen that. Like,
What it is what I think what Dario Nardi showed is that Guardians actually love the process. They enjoy the process of stuff.
yeah, and well, and Kersey said, they have their preferred state of being is being concerned. So they're not happy if they're not concerned about something. And I said before, and I think in a different video, like that's the time if you got SJ friends and they're not concerned about anything or anybody, that's the time to worry about them, because then that's when it seems like they're having like symptoms of depression, because if they're acting too much like they don't care about anybody or anything, then that's a problem. Um, Whereas SPs often get accused of that, even when it's not true. But
Do you, do you think?
the contrast is,
Right,
um, I don't remember exactly what I was going to say because I got off track, but
sorry.
it's okay. It's not entirely your fault. Um, there was I was talking about like SP's vacation, and what time right before that. I don't know, but anyway, it's like, oh, I was contrasting like the whole like your play self is like this thing that you allow yourself to do for a short period of time. For SPs, it's almost the opposite. It's like, our natural instinct is to play, and we have to sort of allow ourselves to have the work self. And we have to convince ourselves, well, if we do the work self, long enough, or then there's a benefit of like, well, at least when we get done with this, then we can play again. Or we try to make play out of the work in some way, find some way to make it fun. And then we don't have to keep work self out as long. See, am I sounding sufficiently NE in this video, coming up with these weird analogies?
No, it's good stuff.
You said no, but like the right answer would be yes.
Well, I was thinking about we were talking before about rebelliousness, and and you've hinted at this before, but SJs, do you think they feel peer pressure the most, and that's why the kids can get into like gangs?
Yes, I don't think there's any question that comes mainly from SJs to other SJs, because there's that desire to belong, desire to fit into the group. And I'm not saying that other types never want to fit in, but they want it in different ways. They don't want to fit in by being like everybody else. Whereas you have, like with SPs, you'll have people that want to fit in by showing that they're better than other people at something, or tougher than other people. That there's some kind of skill or talent they have that makes them deserve to be,
They want to stand out, don't they?
Yeah. Even the ones that are in groups, like for instance sports teams, like you can say, oh, I want to make the team, but they don't want to make the team just so they can be a part of a team. They want to make the team so they can use their individual skill to stand out.
Yeah.
So they can make an impact and be noticed and just have fun. I mean, it's not, again, I sometimes make it sound like there's this big agenda. A lot of times it's just, well, they want to do this because it's fun. So it's less about belonging to the group. That's just sort of the outlet for it.
Yeah, if people remember the wide receiver, what is it? Terrell Owens? T.O. Yeah, he was very much like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, the majority of professional athletes anyway are SPs, although there's certainly a healthy contingent of SJs as well, because there's just a lot of them. But the ones that tend to get the headlines usually are the SPs. That's the thing, of the SJ athletes, it tends to be, they don't get noticed as much, or they don't get as much publicity, because they tend to be the ones that just go about their business and don't try to stand out or make a name for themselves. They just do their thing.
Oh, do you think Peyton Manning's an SJ?
He could be, yeah. I don't know. I don't know enough about his personality to really know for sure. I know that he's seen as a good leader, but yeah, he could be.
He loves watching tape.
But I think about, as far as football players, think about somebody like Steve Largent as being a pretty prototype example of an SJ receiver versus you mentioned T.O. Big contrast there. Or even like can't believe I'm going blank on his name. Tim Brown. Yeah, I couldn't remember why I couldn't. A lot of times you can tell in nowadays the SJ athletes by the ones that stay with the same team for so many years, because it tends to be that the SP ones don't do that as often. They tend to jump teams. I'm not saying all of them, but I mean, so I have a good hunch that Tim Duncan from the Spurs could be another SJ. Because
actually,
he graduated college. All 4 years. He could have come out for the draft earlier than that and then he stayed with the same team his whole career. He's very much team oriented. He's seen as sort of like the quiet leader that just, he kept working, get better, but he was never flashy or wasn't really trying to make a huge impact on anybody or the league, whatever. It was like, go about your business and do your daily work, and the good things happen, kind of. And obviously, he was supremely talented, allowed him to be in that position in the first place. But yeah, the work ethic and the mentality strike me as being more that way. And sort of reflects his coach, because I think Popovich is an SJ too, so it's sort of like they kind of are mirror images of each other in some ways.
So if we go through some old names, what about James Lofton, Art Monk, Jerry Rice?
I don't know enough about Lofton and Monk's personality to make even a guess on them. Jerry Rice, yeah, I really don't know enough about him either. I would say, yeah, I'm not going to even try to guess.
Lynn Swan?
Yeah. Lynn Swan. See, he's tough too because he became a politician. And so, I don't know how much of his personality when it came to how he was in like his post-playing career, because I'm a little too young to really have seen him when he was playing, because that was like really early childhood for me. I mean, his heyday was the 70s.
Talking of sportsmen, that third bullet point, interested in new products, will promote them if they turn out useful to him.
Yes. I thought about that, and I was like, basically, see, I don't have a thing. I think the NTs sort of have the realm of like the new technology is really their thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the SPs don't react to new technology or even non-technology things that just come out. I mean, if you look back at my posts on various internet things, I mean, I remember I posted a thing when Mountain Dew came out with a new flavor that was like, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like a blue flavor, and it was really good. I posted a picture of it and talked about it being awesome and stuff like that. So that's sort of an example of promoting a product.
And you want to be like the first people to use something and impress other people with it and say, hey, look at this new thing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is I use that as a contrast too, because I was talking about like the directive type people, or the people that are like wanting to control people, will tell them what to do and will say, you need to use this product, or you need to do this with your life, or now I've long said that if you want an SP to like something or do something, don't start the sentence with "you need to," because that's an immediate turnoff. Like, there's certain words you can say that are going to like shut the door, and starting a sentence with "you need to do this" is going to do that. Especially if it's really vague. Like, I can remember one time when I was still playing soccer, where one of the other kids on the team told me, "You need to play better." What the hell am I supposed to do with that? Like, that's not any kind of constructive criticism. You can't do anything with that. Like, oh, okay. Well, I was planning to suck, but now that you told me to play better, I'll look into that.
Yeah, just so people know, the directive SPs are the STPs, and the informing SPs are the SFPs.
Yeah. So naturally, the SFPs are better. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
But I was saying that, like, the difference is with like SFPs is we'll tell you about the thing that we think is awesome, and we might say something like, "Oh man, you got to try this." But the difference is that we're not actually telling you like you have to do this. We're not giving you an order. We're just saying, "Oh, this is really good. You should, share it." But if the person's like, "Nah, man, I'm good. I don't want to do that," most of the time we'll probably be like, "No, okay, you're lost." We're not gonna like, force feed it to somebody like that way. As opposed to like an ESTJ that would be like, "No, you will have this.
Yeah.
For an ESFJ, that might be like, okay, but you really, you know, they do this thing where they're like, they're informative also, but they're informative in sort of this way where they're like trying to pressure you with it.
Yeah,
You
passive
really
aggressive a little bit.
should. Yeah, I think you're really gonna miss out.
It's like when people say you got to watch this. It's like in the way they say it. It's not like a should. It's just like it just comes across as an idiom, as a
hey,
saying.
y'all, watch this.
Right.
That's
so
the redneck version.
oh dear. And the fourth bullet point is, oh, this one's a bit. This maybe fits more ESTP. Feels intuitively what buttons he has to push to move his case along.
I push this button, and this button, and this button, and this button, this. Yeah, I do that, like, you know, because I'm carrying the case, and then I hit the buttons to, like, close the case, and then I can move it along. Yeah, there's a good example of that.
So at the moment, Jeff is not that too tired because he's still on the literalist humour. When he gets into the any humour, then you know he really is tired.
So, like, no, I'm pretty tired, man. Because, like, I mean, if you think about it, like, if you really think about it, I mean, think about it. Like, snowflakes are, like, representative of, like, the class system in society, man. Because, like, it's like, it just looks like white stuff falling from the sky. Like, nobody... I mean, when it's falling, it's just like, it's just a bunch of white crap, you know? But then when you look at, like, snowflakes all close up, there's, like, all these intricate designs and stuff, man. I mean, they're, like, layers and, like, it looks like little stained glass windows and stars and stuff. I mean, it's got, like, this design to it. And it's like, wow, from a distance, it's just white gunk falling from the sky. But when you look at it up close, you're like, man, there's, like, layers and hierarchies and artistry and just amazing stuff in there, man. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Perfect,
someone could leave a comment. Jeff is an ESFP, and then the link to that point where you did that.
Well, I'll probably get another message. I forgot to tell you that I got a private message after the last video we did telling me yet another "you're not really an ESFP" message. Because of certain things I said, they were like, "No, this shows this function has been replicated by the functionary." I'm just like, okay, whatever you say, dude. Sure. Yeah. Man, some people like we talked about it before, like. Some of your buds in the SOCIONICS groups are just like, I mean, they're going up and shaking your hand and saying, "Hey, nice to meet you. Yeah, did you know that the Spornak is approaching at ridiculous speeds and is going to glide your Flogenflov?" I mean, that's what they sound like to like most people. It's like, what alien cult meeting did you just walk out of?
Well, the good SOCIONICS people are in the SOCIONICS Model G group.
Yeah,
they're the good people.
Yeah, even some of the ones that it's like they're stuck on these. Oh well, that type is your supervisor. That type is your conflictor. Like, okay, I can conflict with anybody, all right, and I can also supervise anybody, and anybody can supervise me. You know, there might be certain different results that happen depending on the person, but you know. Just back away from the diagrams and the boxes, all right? Just back away.
Yeah, they're a little bit
take a deep breath.
They're a little bit too dogmatic with the
and
theory.
I don't even think it's necessarily dogmatic, as it is just sort of like it's like this sort of cop out where you say instead of you know, I've been accused of saying thinking is hard because it is, but it's that sort of a laziness where you're like, thinking is hard, so I'm just going to go jump back into this box where these boxes are so defined for me that I don't have to think anymore. I can just go, oh, yeah, this goes to this, and this goes to this, therefore this.
Whereas I think INTPs, they don't like being stuck with one model. They like playing with different models.
Mm-hmm.
in a different way from ESFPs. They like playing with different mental models, and because that's the fun.
My INTP brother like doesn't have any particular attraction to like personality typing stuff. Like whenever it's brought up, his reaction is usually just disinterest, but every once in a while he'll sort of like mildly mock it, but not in like a way where he's saying that, you know, there's some kind of evil about it or even like inherently stupid. It's just like he doesn't care about it, and he doesn't really give it any particular validity in his mind. But
maybe he might like looking at this grid.
I don't know. I mean, probably not initially, unless he saw something. You basically have to present it to him in a way that way was somehow going to accomplish something else for him. I think. Like if he was having difficulty with a particular person in some way, maybe you could say, okay, well, this shows what's happening here, and if he actually saw that demonstrated, maybe he could. You know, I'm just guessing. I really don't know.
I got an idea. Say he's caught in a particular woman or is interested in a particular woman, and you know what type she is, and you can show him like the profile of that type.
He's an INTP, man. He doesn't know anything about women. No, I'm just kidding. I'm half kidding. I'm not really kidding about my brother, but I'm kidding about INTPs in general. Some of you are sure, you know, actually do go outside. But actually, these days, my INTP brother actually goes outside more than my ISTP brother does, I think.
That's because what happens at a certain age, once they get towards middle age, INTPs turn into a little bit of an ESFJ.
If you say so.
But without
at my age, I turn into a little bit of an LEGO. I mean, it seems like
that?
my hands don't really like, you know, my arms they're not flexible. Like they're just like they're on a track, and my hands are just claws like this, you know, like Legos.
I think it's supposed like they develop things not the actual attitude though of the ESFJ, but just better people skills, a bit more assertive, things like that.
Well, the people skills I would agree from what I've observed, and I don't know. I mean, some people would obviously call that developing their extroverted feeling function or whatever, but I don't even necessarily attach that. Just say is like, yeah, they learn that there are benefits to sort of conforming somewhat to certain social expectations.
Yeah.
And they don't fight those as much because they kind of look at it as, okay, well, there's actually a benefit to this. And maybe they're a little more honest about, it does make me feel good when I've got family around me, you know? I think a young INTP might not be able to admit that. Whereas more mature INTP would say, okay, I acknowledge that this situation happens where my family is supporting me in some way or they're around me. Okay, this is actually makes me feel good for a certain amount of time and not beyond that.
Yeah, so when did you think your brother changed a bit? Did he change like after 30? What particular age did he change?
It was pretty gradual, I guess. In a particular time that I think I just saw some sudden change in him or something. I mean, I can contrast it by thinking about how he was like a teenager and before with how he is now, but that's obviously quite a few years. I mean, he's over 40 now, so. But yeah, sometime in the 20s probably was, you know, when it kind of maybe crossed the line over to the majority of the time being basically a pleasant person around most people, you know, as opposed to coming off smug and arrogant most of the time.
Yeah, and I know it all.
Still has his moments, but not all the time. Now it's kind of more the exception, like certain areas.
Of course, it might also be a fact that as the INTP gets more confident, they don't need to prove to people that they know it all.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things I think applies across the board in all types is the maturity is sort of not feeling as much pressure to prove yourself in whatever way you care about doing that. And so the same thing for me, you know, for SPs, I think it's like, you know, you don't when you're younger, it's like you're like, man, I don't want anybody to see me as wimpy or boring or predictable or all these things. And it's not, I'm not saying that I want people to see me that way now. It's just I care less about worrying about, doing that. It's like I'm kind of content with, okay, yeah, I'm going to be seen that way by some people because whatever particular standards they have, that's just the way they're going to see me, and there's nothing I can do about that. So, whatever. I'm
And
just going to live my life.
and now that we're older, is that we do judge younger people, and it's like, so the younger people are thinking, hey, I have to prove myself to these
Well,
people,
I
even if
think,
they're just
okay,
like 5 years older.
yes and no. I mean, when it comes to me, I still think I'm extremely open-minded. Um, and I love younger people in general. When they say something stupid, then yeah, sometimes I might be like, okay, that was stupid. But again, it's usually I'm only going to object to it if again it's something where they're trying to control somebody else. When they're
Yeah.
trying to limit freedom, limit options, limit, when they're trying to like basically to me present a narrow-minded point of view. Those are the only times where I mind that. Like younger people just kind of being, wild and stupid, whatever. That in itself, I don't have an inherent problem with. Obviously there's limits to that. There's things like, yeah, I'm not happy about like people who drive drunk and stuff like that because obviously that causes
Yeah.
harm and often and sometimes death and stuff, but especially to innocent people. Um, Obviously I don't like stuff like that, but I'm just talking in a general mindset. When I hear people that are like, oh, young people, they don't take life seriously enough. They just want to be wild and have fun, and I'm like, okay, yeah, what's wrong with that? Like that, I don't have a problem with. It's
But
I don't have that thing where like, oh, if you don't know by 21 exactly what careers you want to do, you're falling behind,
it's like,
whatever.
if they know type, then they know that a lot of guardians are very sensible, even as children.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I said, what I have learned from a long time observation is that with SJ kids, it's like they still rebel. They still have their times where they do what they're quote unquote not supposed to do. But it again, it's sort of like it's a secondary thing. It's like this other version of themselves that sort of has to be there at certain times, but doesn't reflect like their preferences. They'd still prefer to be conforming and doing what people want them to do. So that makes them feel better to do that. So they can have fun, but it usually takes other factors. It's like they have to allow themselves to have fun, and even then, with
Um,
some people, it seems, especially those ESTJs, man, it's like I even when they're playing games and stuff, I still don't. You don't hear them talk about how much fun they had. You know, they'll talk about winning and losing stuff, but they won't talk about as much about, oh, that was really fun. You don't hear those words that much from them as much. I'm not going to say never. Again, these aren't absolutes. These are just like the patterns that I've observed. You know.
um, Part of the theory of this position is it's something that is worked on. So, for instance, in the case of the INTP, they learn how to better relate to people over time, and like things like being appropriate and things like that, and like judging the status of a relationship. But so I suppose the theory of this position is that over time the ESFP gets better at NE, or okay. So in your example, do you think you get better at? Have you got better at any type humor? And do you try
I
to
don't know.
work on that?
I mean, somebody else would have to judge that, I guess. Maybe I'm better at harnessing it in the sense that all of those like late night times where we'd just be giggling and coming up with random weird jokes. Me and my brothers, or me and girlfriends, or other people, whoever I was hanging out with at 3 in the morning. Um, maybe that was just sort of like that happened in that moment, and then it was gone, and I could remember it.
Yeah.
But now, there's been more times I've had the opportunity to sort of use that, not as much as I'd like to, because I'd like to have like 10 million subscribers to my YouTube channel by now and stuff,
Um,
but I still have found ways, and online has helped me do that, because it's like there's things that sort of are automatically more permanent. So there's sort of a reminder of their existence.
I mean, a few days ago, you got the biggest laugh out of me when you did a spoof of Any with a particular voice.
Yeah, I don't even remember what I said, but I remember being proud I got you to laugh that much.
Yeah, I remember you saying that's the most you've ever got me to laugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Ben had this thing where he gave me like his text or emoticon, like scale of like, here's how how much I've actually thought this was funny or something, and but in terms of in person talking, like I rarely get that much more than a chuckle out of him. So to get that big of a laugh was pretty enjoyable. I should have just retired right then, because that was all. That's all I came here to do, was make people laugh.
Well, I tend to
had
like
somebody
laugh in
tell
lots of
me.
different styles.
Yeah, I responded. I don't even remember what it was. I said something to this one girl in the AFG group, and we were just kind of like bantering back and forth. And then she said something about, I'm trying to keep myself from like laughing too much. And I said, like, laughing too much? I mean, are you like gonna wake somebody up or something? Or somebody? And she's like, no, just didn't want to like lose myself laughing or something. I thought that was a weird concept. Like, unless there was a practical reason why it was going to bother somebody, till I'm like, why don't you just let it out and laugh, man?
Jeff,
So there's things like that along the way where I hear it and I'm just like, what?
No.
But then I'm like, oh, I guess, just some people.
Because this is the Any section of the profile. If we could talk a little bit about different comedians, like if you tell us which comedians you think are SPs and which comedians you think are NPs,
I don't want to just go down a list or anything like that, because again, celebrity typing is always so hit and miss. Like,
Well, for you, like which comedians do you think like a lot of like, or maybe not what they are, but what they do in terms of their humor, like ones you think do a lot of Any humor.
I think George Carlin did.
Yeah.
I think he had quite a bit, because a lot of his humor was sort of, he would come up with a concept. He would talk about really mundane things, but then he was always interject sort of like, well, what if this happened instead, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that strikes me as kind of an anything. I think Robin Williams is usually sort of thought of as doing some of that.
Yeah.
I don't know about him personally, but I know in his TV show, Andy Richter Controls the Universe, the character of Andy Richter on the sitcom was very, I think he was an INFP, because he was very FIN in terms of the humor. It was very much like he would imagine what was going to happen next, and then something else would happen, but then he would always be very controlled by his values of, what's right and wrong in every circumstance. So it was a very those were the two functions very much highlighted in that show. I mean, there was still plenty of extroverted sensing as well that factored into the plots, but it was very much dominated by that.
So
actually, similar to the show My So-Called Life, which has, I think, another INFP main character, Angela Chase.
So what? Just for the audience, what do you think? So we're talking about what does Any humor look like? Recognize it.
An eggplant with water dripping off of it, being eaten by an orangutan, with bad breath, and itchy fur, wearing a hat,
And I think,
crown of
and I think
rainbows.
bad any humor actually is like that. Like you would say, like if you watch
Just
Monty
end the video
Python,
there, Ben. Just end the video there. Like, that's the perfect thing to end on.
that's the
Like,
truth.
well, you should just cut it off right there. You know, you gotta have the timing down. They're like, you're like, I think bad humor really is like that. Click, and then
It is.
that's it. You just drop the mic.
It is. Because like if you watch Python, I mean they said themselves they only did like 10 good sketches. If you
Oh
see
yeah, see, that's the thing is with them. I mean, you talk about screw the audience humor. They were like the masters of that. They
yeah,
were like, we're gonna do a sketch where there's a guy like trying on socks for like 5 minutes. And the audience just gets like, they start giggling and they get more and more like uproarious laughter. And all the dude's doing is like taking socks and putting them back
yeah.
on. And like, there's
Oh,
nothing else to it. And that's the point.
they once had the suggestion that
Seth MacFarlane, there's another guy
oh
who
yes,
interjects that in his like Family Guy and American Dad, like his shows
that is
full of
like the
that
most.
type of humor. Yeah.
Because it's like the number of digressions they do. And actually, I saw a
Everything is
wonderful.
like, yeah, everything is like a reference back to something else. And it's like
Yep,
Peter
but
Griffin is just like on this string of, this reminds me of the time that you did this and this happened. And it's like,
there's an episode of South Park that brilliantly spoofs Family Guy, and they actually talk about the randomness where they had like a dolphin selecting, and it was like the episode where they had Muhammad inside a teddy bear, and then they showed how the writer on Family Guy, there actually was a dolphin that picked things at random,
mhm.
and it went sideways.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is, Seth MacFarlane is the dolphin.
But that was a
And
wonderful
he
episode.
thinks he's 63% more brilliant than he is.
That was such a good episode of South Park. Right, so the next one is knows what to offer to whom in order to start a promising project.
Yeah, an example of that is last week when I gave Larry over there some Oreos so that he'd build me a house, and then he did. Okay, next.
Right. This one relates more to artisan, I think. Quick to use the opportunities the circumstances provide.
Yeah, because like you talked about something, whatever it is you said, you know, because your words are, you know, the boring ones in this video. I'm the one who says all those.
Yep, that's true.
So you said something or other, and then I went off on that thing about snowflakes, and it was like hilarious, you know. So I used the opportunity to like comment on whatever it is.
What I think Victor's done here is he's noticed that is an artisan trait, like quick to use opportunities the circumstances provide, and he's categorized it under NE because that adaptability thing.
Right, like ENFPs would do it, but not quite in the same way. You know.
Yeah.
ENFPs probably they have this kind of way of like seeming to attract people without even trying to. They're kind of annoying that way. Like,
well, while we're on
I'm
it,
like, I want to attract people, and they're like not even trying, and they're just like, oh, all of a sudden 8 people are following me off a cliff. How did that happen?
Well, while we're on the subject,
meanwhile,
if you
I'm like over in the corner, like, hello, other person here.
Well, while we're on the subject, if you tell me what you think of like each of the NPs, like so start with the ENFP.
They're so great. I mean, just awesome in every way. Like I want to throw a dart at them and explode their head. It's fantastic.
I think you said that ENFP is your favorite type. Why do you like them?
Yeah, they are. I love them. They're just, you know, I'm saving some of this. I'm going to save for a video because I'm going to do a video about how each type is awesome. Because somebody suggested that to DJ R&D because he did the one about how everybody sucks. But anyway, Yeah, ENFPs are like, if you could cuddle fire, that's an ENFP. Did you like that? Is that a good metaphor?
Yeah, but because
If you could
the
cuddle fire.
mental imagery,
Yeah, check that out.
makes it
I'm
funny.
like mental imagerying all over you.
Yeah, but it's like the joke in Blackadder. This is the worst military decision since Olaf the Hairy ordered 10,000 battle helmets with the horns on the inside.
Yeah, that was
So,
terrible. But the thing is I was like, the first thing that popped in my head when you said ENFPs was like they're cuddly. But then I was like, but they also can like go off like firecrackers. So I combined the two, and I'm just like, it's like cuddling fire. They're like,
oh,
when they get all like on the thing, when they're like, you hit the like turbo button on them, and then they just shoot off in whatever direction. It's like a pinball machine bouncing all over the place. But then, like, when they finally come to a stop, you're like, I want to hug you now. That's kind of what it feels like.
so how are they
And it
different from
doesn't
ESFPs?
well,
I think
okay. ESFPs, I think, are like the most forgiving type of all. Like, I mean, you would pretty much have to like. I actually cannot come up with something that an ESFP couldn't like forgive. Like, you could shoot an ESFP's dog in front of them, and I'm not, I don't want to get too graphic, but you could do bad things to their family, and an ESFP is going to be mad. Yeah, they're going to like, oh, that sucks. That was terrible. But at some point, they're going to be like, if you show remorse and you're like, okay, I didn't mean to like kill all your family and do all this stuff, you're gonna be like, yeah, okay, I understand. You had a bad day, whatever. Like, there's this famous story from the Jim Rome show, and I won't tell the whole story, but it became a punchline. It was about his producer, Travis Rogers, and it was about a particular incident that happened when he went to his high school reunion. And the recurring phrase that, basically the excuse that he used was, she was hot and I had a bad night. So that became one of those like go-to, things. And it's like, you say that, and and most people are like, yeah, okay, yeah, see. I didn't say most people, but most people of my type. You tell them that, and that's going to be really all you have to say, and then we're like, oh, okay. And I'm not saying there aren't like, degrees of that, but in general, I think we're like the most forgiving. The NFPs are probably, they're like right up there, but they have like more stuff that'll put you in the like, the door is just like shut on you. But I think they're more willing to reopen it than some of the other NF types are. Like, over time, they can sort of, because I'm gonna let I'm gonna let you in a little secret. ENFPs have like the memory of a 3-year-old goldfish.
yeah.
Like, I mean, you tell them something that happened 3 weeks ago, and they give you a blank look, like, really, that happened? Like, you didn't notice when like you were on a ship that crashed in the ocean? Like, you don't remember that happening? Like, well, I kind of remember having like a fuzzy feeling. Yeah, that was when it happened, right?
That's because
That's basically how they perceive things. And so
yeah.
like they'll just out of nowhere just be like, I'm a little worried because that tree looks like it might fall down. And you're like, that tree has looked like that for 15 years. But it's like they have no memory of that. It's like it just now occurred to them. So
Yeah,
it's
that's the
like,
thing. Yeah.
so the difference is ESFPs will forgive people because we have that feeling of like, I would want people to forgive me, and whatever anybody did, hey, they made a mistake, it's really not that bad. ENFPs will forgive people because they don't remember what you did. Like, it's just gone. They're like, oh, this person killed my family? I don't remember that. Like, then I guess.
So
I, mean,
they
I
move
remember
on.
I remember feeling really sad for a while, but that's what happened. Okay, yeah. You used to
Yeah,
have a sister. Oh yeah, okay. I think I have a vague memory of her.
what about this one here? Knows how to use other people. If you say about yourself and then ESFPs in general. So, for instance, knows how to use other people's abilities and talents to the best benefit of his project.
I wish I was better at that. Yeah,
What
I
about
don't
Bill
know.
Clinton?
What?
What about Bill Clinton? What about that? The way he, do you think he was good at that particular thing?
I don't
Or
know.
maybe other ESFPs you can think of?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm kind of stupid, man. I don't really know anything.
What about
You probably should have picked somebody else for this.
Oh man,
Like,
don't be going dark on me, Jeff.
it's not. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have better lighting, but
Okay. Do you think you're good at seeing talent in other people?
yeah, much better than you. Like you have this thing where you call something bad acting when it's really not bad acting. It's just you don't
Wow.
like that particular style or whatever.
Wow. Well, we
So
can discuss that another time. Yeah, I don't like a bad acting style of overacting.
no, you call a certain style bad acting even when it isn't. Because
Well, hook me up to it.
acting at its essence, acting is convincing someone that you're that character. So if you're doing that, then you're not a bad actor, no matter whether or not you like the particular style the person is presenting.
Oh, that's what I call bad acting when it's not realistic.
Well, no, realism really isn't. It isn't the thing. It's
Oh no,
that person.
not.
You can believe they're convincing as that character.
Oh, I don't. I don't see them. I just see a bad. I just see somebody acting badly, and I don't think that's a real character. I think, oh no, I've got bad acting coming at me. Whereas with
Well,
good acting,
it may
they
be that
appear like a real
you
person.
lack imagination then. Or
Maybe I do.
suspension of disbelief. At least put it that way. You're not as good at
I,
suspending your disbelief.
I'm a bigot when it comes to acting.
Well, when
I
it
really am.
like for instance for me, like if I'm watching a movie and there's ever a point where I'm thinking about an actor, like the style they're acting with while I'm watching the movie, then I'm not enjoying that movie. It's a boring movie.
Oh yeah. Well,
Because if I'm enjoying the movie, then I'm fully engaged in the characters and I'm not really thinking about the acting at all. So if something breaks that for me, where I actually notice that, then that would be where it would happen for me. And in general, to me, if something is a fun, enjoyable presentation, then I'm more likely to notice the other way. I'm more likely to notice if it's a bad movie and there's somebody who's a really good actor that stands out as, man, this guy is like shining through the crap. Like this is the
yeah.
diamond in the garbage. Like for instance, the second of those new live action, not new anymore, but the live action Transformers movies that are all terrible.
Yeah.
The second one was the worst. I don't even forgot what it was even called,
Oh, Turturro, John Turturro.
yeah, John Turturro is awesome in that movie.
Yes, yes.
It's like the movie is terrible, but every scene he's in, he's good. So it's like I forgive that part of the movie. I'm just enjoying his performance and not even caring that's the most like ridiculous convoluted plot in the history of cinema.
What about when he takes his trousers off? Just because he got in a funk. I mean, did it? That was very NE. Just put that random thing in where he's got to change his trousers during a scene.
Yeah, I don't know if that was ad libbed or not. It could have been in the script. It would have made as much sense as anything else there was in the script.
Yeah, yeah, he was brilliant, John Turturro, in there.
Yeah.
But like I said, with him, now he playing Doctor Who, I would be wonderfully happy with because it's like an extension of his natural personality.
Well,
I would love
again,
him to play Doctor Who.
I've never seen him to give a bad performance, so I have no reason to. I think he'd probably be a great Doctor Who, because I think he'd be a great just about anything. If I had, if I was doing a movie or a TV show or whatever, and I had the opportunity to cast him, I think I would take it no matter what the show was. Like no matter you could say, okay, you don't even know what project it is yet. We don't even know what we're doing, and John Turturro's available. Yes, I'll take it because somehow I'm going to. He's going to be good in whatever I put him in, so I'm going to find a place for him. I feel that way about Norm Macdonald and not because he's a great actor, just because he's so funny, and there are certain things that he can do where I know that if I put him in a position, like, he's going to do one of two things: either he's going to give a great performance and actually be like great acting, or he's going to be ridiculously funny by not being right for that. So it's like going to be funny the other direction.
Yeah.
Like one way or the other, he's going to make it funny. Like
Talking about acting, yeah,
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
British acting tends to be worse than American acting.
Okay. I wouldn't know because I really haven't seen that many British actors comparatively. So.
Yeah, it's just our television is full of bad acting.
Well, the thing is with me when I see like British sitcom stuff, is like I don't get most of the jokes, so I can't really tell. I mean, it's hard for me to tell whether somebody's a good or a bad actor in those things because all I know is that they're saying some stuff I don't understand, and the audience is laughing uproariously at stuff I don't understand. So to me, it's like they might as well be speaking some other language because I don't get it. You know, even if they're technically speaking the same language as me, they're making references to things that have no meaning to me, and they're like, you know, stuff that I guess British people get that I don't get. So,
this bullet point here is a killer bullet point. Maybe gifted in various creative.
Did it kill you, or did it kill me?
Well, how about this? It might do. May be gifted in various creative fields, but lacks the consistency to realize his full potential.
See, we talked about that when you first showed me that. So I'm not going to get off on a big rant here or anything like that, but I'm going to say that that's the one thing where I'm going to, as they would say in the Congress, I'm going to reserve the right to object.
Yep, go on then.
Because I don't like the phrase realize his full potential, or even the concept of potential, because it assumes something that you have no way to know, which is you don't know what somebody's potential is. The only way that I think it's valid is in a case like you could say somebody that died young. You know, there's plenty of celebrities you could choose from, but I think about somebody like Chris Farley, for instance. You know, who knows if he had lived till now, how many other movies or what other stuff he would have done. You could say, well, he had the potential to, you know, have a long career and do a bunch. But there's no way to know for sure what he would have done. You know, maybe he would have just flamed out and not, you know, even if he was still alive, not still been in the public eye or whatever. There's no way to know. So even in that case, you can't completely say that you know anything about that. But definitely when somebody lives their life and they like being a taco salesman.
Yeah.
And you're like, you got a degree from Harvard. You should have been like some CEO of a business by now. And he's like, but I like being a taco salesman. Well, you're not living up to your potential, man. No, see, that's crap. You know,
well,
he's living up to his potential as a human being because what he wanted to do was sell tacos, and that's what he's doing.
Yep. I mean,
I'm going to try to from the last video on, Ben, and try to work in tacos to every video we do.
Yep.
Somehow.
You see,
because
I agree with that.
There could still be people out there living a taco-less existence. I want to make sure that you know, we get to the point where that isn't the case. Tacos for the world is my main goal at this point.
I agree with that because I don't like the word potential because I don't see potential. I see properties. So, for instance, if you see an athlete that has fantastic properties, such as this guy has an awful amount of talent, but he's going off rails, right? Then you could say, hey, if this guy really worked hard, he could really achieve something. Surely you must have seen football players that have wasted their talent. That's the sort of thing.
Yeah, and again, it's like, I don't know, it's just the way that I view the world, I guess. The way I view the world, the way I view people is that we're all just travelers on the road of life. There's all these different roads to go down, and if somebody does not, just because somebody seems to be on one track for quite a while, does not mean that that's the track they're destined to be on for their whole life. So just because somebody is insanely talented in a particular area doesn't mean that at some point in their life they can't say, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore.
Mm.
I want to do something else. That doesn't mean they're not realizing their potential. It means they decided to do something else. It's like, and yeah, I know when you talk about athletes, you kind of talk about some people that sort of like are forced into a different track, like certain actions they did kind of, you know, like for instance, an athlete that got involved in drugs, and so that's why they ended up, having to quit playing, or at least not, they weren't as good after that or something. They ruined their body in some way, or there's those things. But I mean, there's people that do everything right, quote unquote, in terms of they don't get involved with stuff that messes up their body, but they just have a freak injury that happens. I mean, I don't think somebody like Dave Dravecky, the former baseball pitcher, um, he went from being like the inspirational comeback story to being another tragedy to back to being the inspirational comeback story again, but in a different area of life, because he was a baseball pitcher. He got cancer in his throwing arm, but then it went into remission. He had surgery on his arm, whatever. He went through rehab and he came back and he pitched and he won the game, and everybody was just like, feel good story. Everybody's super happy for him. Like, it was amazing. Some people said he would never come back, and here he is pitching again, and it's amazing. And for one game, then the second game, he pitched, and a few innings into the game, he started feeling sort of a weird tingling sensation in his arm. And then in the fifth inning, I believe it was, maybe the sixth, in the words of Jim Rome, he threw himself to the plate and left his arm on the pitcher's mouth. So that's a certain way of putting it that spares you the graphic details, but let's just say the snap could be heard throughout the stadium.
Oh.
And he not only was not able to come back and play baseball after that, but he eventually had to have his arm amputated, because what had happened is that the cancer had come back, and it had basically, like, his arm, the bone in his arm broke, and anyway, it's just, without getting into the medical details. After that, though, he decided to become an inspirational speaker. So he went around touring and talking about like the whole experience, and how like his low point that he got to, but then with the help of his wife and I don't know, his pastor or whoever, I don't know, I hadn't heard all the story, but he basically convinced himself, this was basically like my destiny was not to have a long career as a baseball pitcher. Like, I had my moment and then this happened. This was basically the next step in my life, was to do something else. So he wrote a couple books, I think, and it's like it was sort of like he found the positive in that experience. So that's kind of my point, is that somebody could say, well, because of what happened to Dave Dravecky, he didn't live up to his potential as an athlete. But the thing is again, you don't really know what that was. And it's like, whatever reason, the road changed. He did something else because that's what his life led to. So that's why I don't like that phrase. I'm like, potential, it's not that the word itself is a bad word, but it's like, if it's used in context of like, tomorrow there's 2 football games that I'm going to watch, and potentially they could be great games where I enjoy, have a lot of exciting moments. I could say, that's the potential of those football games. That's what I'm hoping for. And of course, in my case, since the 2 games I'm talking about, I have a rooting interest in both. I include a great, exciting game as one where my team blows out the other one. That would be great too. I'm not expecting that to happen in either game, but if it did, I would still enjoy it very much. But more likely, it'll be an exciting game because it's a close game that comes down the wire. The only result that wouldn't be exciting to me is my team losing by a bunch, from the start. That would be bad. But I'm still not going to say, if one or both of the games turns out that way, where my team gets blown out, I'm not going to say, well, that game didn't live up to its potential, because it's still kind of it's just sort of I don't know the right word. It's just sort of like blah phrase. Like,
Yeah.
you have to pinch. Big deal. Do something else. I mean, eat a pizza. I mean, eat a taco. I mean,
Well,
go jump in the swimming pool. I mean, why are you worried about potential? Just give
I
it
think
away.
what we're saying here is a good example of the difference between sensing and intuiting types, where the potential really is something that's just, it's not in the object or the person, it's within the imagination of the person who's observing that person. It's just their own imagination that sees the potential.
Yeah, and see, the way I look at that is, it's fine to imagine stuff, even for someone else. If you want to, I mean, I do that sometimes with, just keep it on football games. I'll imagine sort of what might happen in the game, good or bad. But I'm not going to hold anybody to my imagination of what it could be, and that would just be stupid. Like,
Right,
I mean, a good example is, my son, because I told him that he's got so much of his life ahead of him, and there's all these opportunities that he can have for what he does with his life. But I'm not going to tell him what that should be or what he should do with his life. I've just told him that I want him to be in a position where he has a maximum amount of opportunity, maximum amount of choices. Where at that point he can say, okay, what do I actually feel like doing? And he'd have the opportunity to do whatever that is. But at no point, like, even if I imagine, I really have not spent time imagining him like as an adult in different careers and things like that. I'm sure, I think that's something some parents do, but I really have never done that, because I don't even, I feel like almost that's sort of like not my place to do. Like, it's not my place to decide, even in my imagination, what it is he should be doing with his life in the future. That's for him, not for me. That's not my role in his life.
I mean, right here, Carl Jung wrote, he doesn't know whether the potential is in the actual object. Some of it might be in the object, but I think the object just has properties. It's the person that's, projecting into the object. Like I said, with potential, that's in the eye of the beholder. Potential is in the eye of the beholder, and it's usually an intuiting types.
And potentially, our audience will return to join us again for a future video about something else.
Yeah, well, and we can round up with, you've already talked about ENFPs. So for the last couple of minutes, you talk about, please, what you think of ENTPs, INTPs, and INFPs.
Yeah, they're all great, man.
In relation to their NE, what they're the sort of.
I'm spent, dude. Like,
Oh no.
They cut down trees and build houses with it.
I think you said you like.
Mowing.
I think you said you loved ENTPs until it's like, hey, hang on, you just said something that was a bit odd.
I like the laid back ENTPs, like the ones that aren't all about like telling people stupid stuff, like the ones that aren't about what we were just talking about, like telling people you're supposed to be like living up to your potential and crap like that. Just the ones that seem to just enjoy life and be like, oh, there's all this possible amazement and we can create all these cool things and stuff. Those I like those kind of ENTPs, not the ones that are like, I'm gonna just be a grumpy ass to everybody. I don't like those kind of, the judgmental, like, let me tell you what's wrong with everybody in society and how stupid people are and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't enjoy that kind of stuff.
Right. What about INFPs? What do you think of that?
Who?
INFPs.
INFPs?
Yeah. Have you come across any funny ones?
You're making me think of the old NF Geeks forum discussions about that, because there was a running joke about how INFPs aren't funny. Yes, there are funny INFPs. There really are. There's one. Can't remember. I think I remember her saying she subscribed to my videos. So shout out to Purple Chickens if she ever sees this, from the Typology Central forum, because she's a pretty funny INFP. I enjoy
Maybe an
her
introverted
style.
ENFP.
I enjoy her style of humor quite a bit.
you think it's more in the writing side for INFPs?
The rotting sun? What?
Sorry, writing side.
I don't understand the question.
I was just saying, do you think INFPs express their humour more in writing as writers rather than as
I don't know.
being naturally funny off the cuff? Just because they're introverts.
Maybe. I mean, maybe they can be a little bit more coherent with it that way. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, tennis racket's a tennis racket, you know what I'm saying?
Okay. And have you known any funny INTPs?
Yeah. Comic book guy, he's funny.
Oh, I thought it's more INTJ.
No, I don't think so. And you maybe stop and think about it, but I still don't think so. It seems more INTP to me. But I think you just don't want to accept him into your type. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. See,
because I talked to this one dude one time who was like, he was an INTP and he didn't want to. He basically thought anyone who was fat had to be like a sensing type, or no, I forgot how he put it, but like basically he was typing people by stuff like that, like, because, well, if they were fat, then that means they don't care about like their hygiene or like their health and stuff, and then INTP wouldn't be like that. And he said INTPs are more likely to be skinny, and I'm just like, dude, there are plenty of fat INTPs, okay? Like, whether you want to admit it or not. But yeah, that was one of those dudes who just had these stereotypes about certain types being, you know, because I was talking about what I admired about ESTJs, and he had this image in his head of ESTJ of being some like big fat dude that was lazy and slobbered all over himself or whatever. I'm just like, okay, dude,
crazy.
That is not what the ESTJs I've encountered are like at all. So they don't slow down long enough to get fat most of the time.
Right.
But anyway, cheese is good on lots of things.
Right. So we've that's it, folks. We've finished up, and we basically just covered the bullet points. No digressing. No defining.
Once again, my final word is hug your local ESFP because they probably need one.
Okay. Bye, folks.
Take them to the movies too.
Okay. Bye, folks. Bye.